Welcome back to yet another tutorial. In this one, I'm going to show you how to create a custom hook for using local storage in React. And I'm going to use Typescript for this one because Typescript is getting pretty popular. So it's probably better to show it with Typescript as, Typescript is taking over the world or something like that. All right. So this is the stuff that we're building. There's not much design to this one. As you can see here, I have my local storage. And I have my value, that's the state, and I have a button here to change it. And as you can see here, when I press this button, it will change in the local storage also. And this is a custom hook that I built. So this is the one that we're going to build in this one, and it's going to be a good practice in creating custom hooks in React, and also a little bit of practice in TypeScript and how you can create something that's called generics with TypeScript. So that's what we're going to be using. So I have that page up here. You can read more about it at the typescriptlang.org. So I'm going to explain the generic stuff when we get there. And I'm going to bootstrap this with Create React App. You probably guessed it. That's the one I use all the time, and probably most of you also. So I've opened up this page here where they tell you about adding TypeScript. So we have this little command here we can use to create an application with TypeScript support. All right, so let's go to the console. Maybe something like that. And make sure that you're, of course, in a folder where you want to create your application. And then you type npx create-react-app. And the name of the application, probably going to be Weben, as usual. And local storage dash hook. Yeah, maybe something like that. And then we have --template and TypeScript. So this is going to bootstrap an application with TypeScript support. Press enter and we wait for it. And I'm going to cut this out because you don't want to wait this long. I'm back and it seems to have installed correctly, and that's great. Make sure that I navigate inside of the folder cd weben-local storage-hook. And then I open up my code editor. And we can check the files here. So inside the src folder, I'm going to remove some files. We don't need the app.css. We don't need the app.test.tsx. We don't need the index.css. We don't need the logo. That one we need. We don't need a service worker, and we don't need a setup tests. So I delete these ones. So we only have the React, that's the types for the React, it's for the types in TypeScript. Then we have the index.tsx. I'm going to remove some stuff here, remove the service worker, remove the index.css, and do some auto formatting and save it. And in the app component, we remove the app.css and the logo, and remove everything here, remove the header. And it can just say app now, and I save this file. Go to my console, start up my dev environment with npm start. And hopefully it should work. App, yeah, great. Insanely big font here. We are going to create a new file inside of the src folder that is called use local storage camel casing.tsx. We're in TypeScript now. So that's the new file that we're going to create. And let's move inside of the app.tsx file. We can scaffold that one out first. So first, I like to have arrow functions. So const app, you don't have to have that, of course. And as we're in TypeScript, we can also do it like this, react.fc. That is telling it that it's a React functional component. And fc is built in to React, so that's why I'm grabbing it from React. We are going to import our custom hook here later. But for now, we can just create a p tag. Something like this, and we have a value, and this is going to be our state value later. We type in 1000 for now. And then we're going to have our button. It's going to have an on-click handler. For now, that one is empty. So we can console log click like that. And we can type in change state like that. Do some auto formatting and save it. Go back to our browser. You can see that it works. And it also works here. You can see that it console logs out click every time I click the button. All right, back to the code editor. And we're going to start creating our custom hook, because this is what this tutorial is all about. So make sure that you're in the use localstorage.tsx file. First, we're going to import. We have curly brackets, use state, and we're also going to need use effect. We don't need to import React for this one. We just need the use state and the use effect, but we import them from React. All right. Then we can export const use local storage like this. And you probably know it, but you should name all your custom hooks with use before the name. So use local storage. That way React knows that this is a custom hook. And it equals, and we're going to have a key and an initial value camel cased and an arrow function. I am going to add these types just in a second, so bear with me here. We're going to create a set state. You can call them whatever you want. This is pretty standard. So I have the usual state and set state. We call use state. So I'm just scaffolding it out now for us. Then we're going to have a use effect that is going to trigger when the state has been updated. We also want to write the value in local storage. So use effect, an arrow function like that. And this one is going to be dependent on the state, like so. And we're going to return something. So we return an array with a state and a set state. So we're just returning these ones here. So what this hook will do is it's going to kind of intercept the use state and also make sure that you write and read from the local storage. So we can use this hook later just exactly as we use the use state hook. And it will make sure that it writes the value to the local storage and grabs the value if it's there in the local storage. But we're in TypeScript now, and we have to type these ones here because you see it complains. It says that it implicitly has an any type, and that's not good. So we're going to use something for this one that's called generics in TypeScript. And generics is something you can use when you don't know the value that is going to be sent in to the function. It's much better than to use any, for example, because when you use any, you lose the information about the type that is sent in. And we don't want to do that. So we can use generics. And the generic is something that TypeScript can use to infer the type that is sent in. So in an arrow function like this, we create angle brackets like this. And for this one, I call it a T, that's for type. You can call it whatever you want. And you can see now also that it complains here. T has no corresponding closing tag. And that's, I don't know if you could call it a bug, but when you use arrow functions, you can't just specify T like this. You could use it if you use a regular function, but if I do some auto formatting, you can see that it adds a comma here, and that will make it work. Otherwise, you could also extend it, T extends, and this will also work. But for this one, I'm using the comma because it's short and it works, and it also works with the auto formatting. So you have to do this if you use an arrow function like I do here. And this means that we can use T inside of this one when we set the type for them. The key is always going to be a string. So that one we can just type out as a string. And the initial value, that's the one that we don't know what is going to be used for state. It can be an object, it can be a number, a string, or anything else that you can use. So we have a colon and a T. And this one will make sure that TypeScript infers this value and assign it to this one here. So this is a generic in TypeScript. And it's great because it makes it really reusable. You don't have to specify the exact types here. You can use it for whatever type you want. And it will keep the type inside of here all the time. We don't lose the type. All right, then we're going to have a return type on this one. So I'm going to create a type for this one. You can use either interface or type. I'm using type. Type, I call it return type. And this one is also going to get the T. We are going to send that one in to this one later. So it also infers what type it is. Okay, it equals. I'm going to return an array because I'm just going to return the state and the set state. So I'm just passing these ones on and return them from this hook. All right, so the return type is going to be either T or undefined, because sometimes we don't want to specify an initial value. So that's why it can be undefined also. And then we have the return type for the set state. So if we look here, we have react.dispatch, and then we have the prev state, undefined and undefined. For now, that is going to change later when we fix this. But we have a react.dispatch as a return type for the setter in use state. So we can specify that here, react.dispatch. Then we have these angled brackets again. We're telling it it's a React set state action. And we have angled brackets again, and we're telling it it's the T or undefined. And we end it with another angled brackets. And this is the types for our return type. And now we can specify that this hook is going to return this type. So just after the parenthesis, we create a colon and return type. And then it complains because we need to give it the T also. So you can say that this T here is kind of like an argument. So you have to send that value along to this one, otherwise it won't know that value. So we create angle brackets and the T, and now it won't complain. So that's great. We have specified the return type with TypeScript, and we also specify the types of the parameters here. So we can start building our actual logic for the hook now. And actually this initial value is going to be optional. So in TypeScript, we can create a question mark and it will make sure that it's optional. We don't have to specify that if we don't want to. So you use a question mark for that one. Okay. So let's be inside the use state parenthesis here, because we are going to send along an inline function. If you want the function to be run only when you initialize the state, you can create an inline function. And that is specified also in the official documentation in React. So we create an inline function here, like this. And first we're going to check if we have an initial value, because if we don't have an initial value, we are just going to return, because we're not setting an initial value to use state. So if we don't have an initial value, we are just going to return. All right? Otherwise, we are going to check if we already have the item in the local storage, and then we return that value. Otherwise, we return the initial value. And we're going to do this in a try and catch block. So try, and we have catch. We have the error, like that, because we want to catch the error if we get some error with from local storage. For example, there are cases when you don't have access to the local storage, and a lot of stuff can happen. So we better wrap it in a try and catch block, so we make sure that we catch any errors. But if we have an error here, we are just going to return the initial value, because then somehow something went wrong. We couldn't read from the local storage, and then we just return the initial value and we skip that local storage part. All right. So inside try, we create a const. We have the value, and from local storage dot get item, and we have the key that we send in to this hook here. So we're going to check if that key is in the local storage. So if this key is already in the local storage, we get the value in this value const. So we return if we have a value. This is a ternary operator. We're going to JSON parse it, because you can only write strings in the local storage. So we have to parse it back to the original value. So JSON.parse, and we have the value, and then we return that one. Otherwise, if we don't find a value in the local storage, we return the initial value. Like so. Do some auto formatting. So this is the logic for the initiation of this hook. We first check if we send in an initial value. If we don't want to set an initial value, so we just return. Otherwise, we check if the local storage contains this key that we send in, and if it does, it returns the value to this const. If we have a value, we parse it back to its original shape, and then we return that value. Otherwise, we return the initial value. And if we get an error, we just return the initial value. So that's how we initialize this. Then we have the use effect. So inside the curly brackets, first we're going to check if we have a state. And this is also related to if we don't set an initial state, we won't have a state. And then we don't want to write that one to the local storage. If we don't do this check, it will write undefined to the local storage. And that's probably not a big problem, but we don't need to do that. So we check if we have a state. And if we have a state, we have another try and catch block with error. And in this case, we can just console log out the error. I'm not going to handle this one in this tutorial. So you can do whatever you want if you get an error here. So if we have a state, we are going to write that state to the local storage. So local storage dot set item. We have the key, and then we have to make it a string because you can only write strings to local storage. So JSON dot stringify, and we have the state. And we do some auto formatting. Okay, we have to specify the key also. Save the file. And let's check the types here. As you can see here, it's react.dispatch any, and that's not good. We have to specify the type here also for this one. So just to the right of use state, we create angled brackets. And it is going to have the type of T, but it's also possible that it's going to be undefined. So we have to specify that one also. And now if we check this one, you can see that the set state action is T, and that's good. And the state is going to be T. And if we check the return type, it's going to be T. And it's going to be T for the set state down here. So that's great. We have typed this, so we keep the type along this chain in this use local storage hook, and that's great. So save the file, go back to the app.tsx file, and up here we're going to import our custom hook. So import use local storage from // use local, use local storage, like that. And then we can use this one inside of the app component. So we're using it just as the use state hook. We have a const with the structure out, the state, and the set state. And as usual, you can call these ones whatever you want. We call the use local storage, and we're going to send in the key that we want. And this is the name that we want the key to have in the local storage. And we can have it test ls. And we give it an initial value of 1000. Okay, and now we can use these values here. So we can swap this one out to the state, like that. And then also our onClick handler is going to be something like set state. And for this one, I'm just going to create random numbers. So I math floor it, and then I have math.random, and multiply it with maybe 10,000, something like that. Do some auto formatting so it looks nice and clean, and it seems to be working. So this should be it. We have successfully, hopefully, created a use local storage custom hook. So let's go back to the browser and see what we've got. Reload it. I'm going to remove the key in the local storage and reload it. So 1000, that's great. That's the one that we created as an initial value. And it successfully writes the new values here. So that's super great. I just want to make sure that this one isn't stuck in an infinity loop or something like that. So console log re-render. I'm always used to doing this now when I work with hook, just to make sure, as I told you, not stuck in an infinity loop, because that's very easy to happen in React with hooks if you don't think of everything you do. But it seems fine. So that's great. All right, let's just try it also with not providing an initial value like this. Save it. Go back. I'm going to remove this one. And if this works, we shouldn't have any value here on initial render, and we don't have that. I press this button and it writes it to local storage. So that's great. It's working. This one is really, really reusable. You use it just like useState, and it's going to write the value to local storage and also grab the value from local storage if you have a value there. So that's really useful, actually. And I think this is actually also a great example on how good React hooks can be, because you can create a lot of code that you can reuse on different places in your application. So it's really easy to just import this hook whenever you want your state to be in the local storage also. All right, hope you learned something in this one. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm hoping for many more subscriptions, because I want to share my knowledge with as many as possible, of course. So make sure to subscribe if you like this channel. I publish weekly videos, and I see you in another one.